Mana mana. Mana mana. Mana mana. Mana mana. Mana mana. Mana mana. Hello and welcome to Backbone Bites with myself, Jimi Longmuir, and my very special guest, John Purves. Hello, John. How are you doing?
Hi, Jimmy. Hi, everyone. Good to see you.
Been gigging with John pretty much since I started doing comedy. Been gigging quite a lot over the past few years, and we're here to talk about it. Some of the gigs, we've just finished a spectacular run at the Glasgow International Comedy Festival. I think you were on all the gigs for the first week, weren't you?
Yes, I did quite a lot with you there.
We'll talk about it then. So, without much kind of further ado, I'll just ask you a wee bit about yourself. What's your story?
Sure. I've been doing comedy. I did comedy from about 2007 for
Right.
about 7 or 8 years. And then I stopped for 9 years, did nothing
Right.
at all. And then within the past year and a half, I've started doing it again. It's been fun coming back to it.
Well, it's always a lot of fun. You're always a lot of fun on the lineup. It's always great to gig with you. You've done quite a lot of gigs, and you're also gigging quite a lot of other places as well. You had your actual own show in the Glasgow Comedy Festival with Steve Goldie and Brian Mooney.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. What was that called again?
I can't even remember what it was called.
Goldie's Oldies.
Goldie's Oldies.
Goldie's Oldies.
I'm really glad you remember that.
I think you might have been making up the part because it's got oldies in it.
Yeah, we actually our sort of unique selling point was we're the oldest show in Glasgow Comedy Festival because our combined ages was some staggering number.
All right, well, I wouldn't pry.
No, it's scary.
I actually gigged with Steve and Brian on another gig, Sandy Woods' gig, and Van Winkle.
Right.
That was Cabbage Patch Comedy. That was quite a fun night actually.
Right.
It was a Monday night, and it was quite busy, man. It was good. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's good.
I'll need to get Brian on the podcast actually, and Steve at some point. But that's for out with the podcast. But so where did you start? What was your first gig?
I did Viv G's course, stand-up comedy course, which was I'd always loved stand-up comedy, and I used to go and see comedy all the time. I lived in Edinburgh for a long time, so I used to go to Fringe a lot, and probably thought because of that, when I saw it advertised, I thought, do you know, that's amazing, a stand-up comedy course. And I thought, right, I'll do the course and then it'll be out the system. You know, I'll do the course, I'll do the showcase at the end, it'll be out the system, and that'll be me, I've done it. And I did it, and I think if the showcase had been a disaster, I would never have done it again. Never have done it again. But it went really well. Yeah. And the course was loads of fun. It was really, Viv is amazing. Yeah. And just what you learn about yourself as well as about comedy when you do that. Yeah. So the showcase went really well. And because of that, I thought, I'll do this again and I'll see how it goes. And I think one of the things for me in those days, it was way easier to get into comedy than it is now. Right. I think it's way harder for people now, much less new people doing comedy in those days, which meant that from the very start, you would be doing gigs with really top name people all the time. Whereas now, I think, or my impression just now is that people have to work way harder to get to doing, you know, some of the bigger gigs. Whereas for me, very early days, I was doing them.
Yeah, I was the same. I done Obi's course.
Right.
And like you're saying, it is kind of harder these days. It's a much bigger scene. These days, there's much more comedy, and a lot of that's actually came since the lockdown.
Yeah, yes, it does seem to have
exploded.
Grown. Yeah.
Which, I mean, this time, like 3-4 years ago, we were really feeling the absence of comedy, you know, and it's been good. It's been good to get a bit of. It is harder to get to the bigger rooms or to get to like the bigger levels.
Yes.
But at the ground level, it's kind of exciting still as well. You know?
It is, and it's good to see so many people doing it. And that was one of the, when I came back, just wasn't sure what it was going to be like. And I knew one or two people, but actually I was quite surprised at how many new people there were in the scene.
So how many great new people as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, absolutely fantastic at it. And so just mentioned lockdown there. How did you deal with lockdown? Because you're a minister, or
I was then, yeah. It was interesting for me because for me, my job was still there. So I know for lots of people, their jobs changed or they were furloughed or things were different. For me, it was really different.
Yeah.
But my job was still there.
Yeah.
I had to do a really steep learning curve because at the beginning, I was really ignorant at the beginning. And I thought, this is going to last a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I know.
And so I thought, like with doing services and stuff, because suddenly church shut down.
Yeah.
So I thought, right, it'll be a couple of weeks and then, we'll be okay. And so I don't know if I need to do anything. And something said to me, I really need to learn to put stuff online. So we did stuff on Zoom. Every week I did something on Facebook and I did something online for like a church service.
I think I remember seeing some of that.
Right.
Yeah. Can't say I tuned in, but I remember seeing stuff.
Right. So for me, it was good because I needed to learn, I got a sort of online editing suite thing, which was great. It's called One Shot, something like that. And I had to learn from nothing. I started to learn to edit videos because what I was doing at first was I was doing like a whole church service in a oneer. And I'm a real perfectionist. So if I got it wrong, like halfway through, I went back to the beginning and did it again. So the first ones were taking me like a whole week to record an hour. And then when I learned to edit, then I could do it in segments and then stick them together. And I could put images on them and music on them. I bought loads of music, loads of online music, loads of online images.
Essentially what you're saying is you didn't just sing Mana Mana
I
for it,
didn't just sing Mana Mana. I think it would take a lot to get me to do that ever again.
Well, okay, I can't book you anymore because we know I've been talking about that recently quite a lot, how it's like I did sing that for the podcast theme tune, and it's became a thing when I sing it live now in the gigs. And it does get people happier.
It really does. And it's good to have a connector. It really is good to have. I'm realising I was nodding there, but obviously the podcast nodding is of limited value.
You can see you there. But I think more and more I'm going to have to own that, yes, I did use that as my podcast theme tune, and it does refer to Zoom. But the real reason I sing it is just through an absolute love of the Muppet Show.
Can't beat the Muppet Show.
No, you can't, not at all, man. And it's I've been thinking about that more and more, about it's a fun gigs, and there's quite some of my gigs are a wee bit shambolic, but they're always fun. They're always
I think
good.
part of the beginning stuff is connecting with people.
Yeah.
And I think if you've got whatever your sort of special thing is for connecting with people, that's where you start. I think in a set, in a gig, no matter what you're doing, is if your first bit can be a connector with people, then immediately people are in and they're part of it.
Well, I think actually I might start just going up to the microphone and going Mana Mana and seeing what happens, like in sets.
It would work.
Yeah, I'm thinking that because a lot of the time I'm going up and I'm saying the stuff written in my hand, and quite a lot of people genuinely think I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and I personally enjoy going in the back foot and then clawing it back, but sometimes it gets too hard.
Right.
You've lost people that genuinely think you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can never control people's perceptions.
Yeah.
And that's something as you go on with comedy too, that you see people reacting in different ways to different things, and you thought, oh, I didn't expect that, or I didn't think you would pick that up that way.
Yeah. It's not. I'm noticing it, and it's good practice for me to put myself in the back foot, but it's not always the best thing for the night and for the crowd and for the other act.
Right.
That's something I'm going to need to think about. Aye, it's just this.
It's interesting how you work that through, because I think as you do things, you see things that work and you see things that don't work, or they don't work in that particular place. And so if you shift them to a different place, or if you move something else or put something before it, it can change that whole dynamic.
It changes the trajectory and the whole set. Aye. And I was thinking about your stage presence. Like, if I was to think, picture John Purves on stage, you would have that big smile.
Right.
I've never seen you not have that big smile, and it's always great for a room. People always take to you. I've never seen anybody not take to you, and I've seen a couple of quiet gigs where you're not getting the big laughs, but I've never seen you not smile.
Right. I just love doing it.
I know,
it
rips out.
I love audiences.
Yeah.
I love people being there. So for me, a lot of it is about connecting with the audience, because I do love audiences. I just really like people being there, and I like doing that sort of communication thing. And one of the interesting things for me is because I'm not spontaneous, like not at all.
Yeah.
And therefore my stuff is totally scripted. And that means that probably you have to work a bit harder at making it seem spontaneous and making people feel that it's, that it's something that is...
They're on a kind of journey of discovery with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're scripted, it's about not making it seem like you're reading an essay or something like that.
I don't know, I was gigging with Graham Mackey last night, and he'd done like a 20-minute set based around one joke.
Yeah.
And it was like an old joke of his, and it was the crowd work in between all the parts of that one fucking story.
I love people that can do that, that can just take something and run with it. See, I can't, I'm not quick enough or smart enough to do it, because I'm always scared. If something went, I wouldn't know where it's going.
And
how
do I get back to my script?
To know where it's going. And I so admire people like Graham Mackey that can do that, because Graham can do it. He can just have a conversation with you, and it's fantastic.
But I've done a lot of quiet gigs with Graham, but I've never had a bad gig with Graham. Ever.
Yeah.
He's one of those people that you just cheer up the minute you see him.
Yeah, everybody relates to Graham.
Actually, he came in wearing his tie from the school, and I still make sure he wore it on stage. I was like, first you ditch your shorts, now you're wearing a tie. What the fuck's happening? And he went up and he's like, I'm wearing the tie because I was going to say it was a school, but because I couldn't ask me to wear the tie. And so, all right, man, that's a wee bit of an intro. Are you ready to look at this is your live section of the podcast?
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Okay, and here's the first picture. It's you at the Panopticon, October 2022, I believe.
I love the Panopticon. The ethos and atmosphere of the Panopticon is just wonderful.
And the history as well.
And the history of it. And I think sometimes you go places and they already have an atmosphere. Yeah. And other times you've got to create that yourself. Yeah. And I think the Panopticon, the people that run it are just amazing. Yeah. They're just such lovely people. And the whole atmosphere there I just love it. Audiences are always good. The only thing is that it doesn't have any heating.
So that was a cold one.
The first time I went, I did the Panopticon, it was the summer. And it was quite warm. The second time I did it, I didn't realise it didn't have any heating, and I was frozen.
They've got blankets and stuff, and we're moving forward. I think the same night. It is, yeah. It's all the cast in that.
Ah,
night.
Cool.
I think I've used this one before. I think I remember talking about who else has been on the podcast. That doesn't matter. It's Kavita, David Cruikshank, Jamie Kirk, Izzy Shaw, Liam Dolan, he was fantastic that night.
Yeah,
Peter Bell,
absolutely.
Chap there whose name I can't remember, and of course Nico, who's holding up a bag for some reason.
And Kavita's brilliant.
Yeah, Kavita's great, man. Yeah. She always tries to get these photographs in that wee green room at the back.
Yeah,
I love that.
So you've always got a record of it.
Yeah. I love that wee green room at the back. There's like all the there's a prop section.
That's it.
And then you go in for a coffee.
So many random things in there.
That's great. Yeah. You're not entirely sure that people that you see in the audience are corporeal. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think no, I was going to say I might have been my first one out of lockdown, but it wasn't. I'd done it the year before as well, and I think I'd done it earlier that year as well. I'd done it in April that year as well. And here we are at the Lincoln.
Oh, do you know the Lincoln's great because it's so close to where I live. It is literally the gig that I do that is closest to my house. It's 2 minutes down the road, and I love being there
Yeah,
because I usually know people because I worked in this area
yeah,
for
yeah.
about 40 years. And one of the things about coming back was that you were great in just giving me gigs
Yeah,
because when you come back in, you realise you don't really know many people.
yeah.
And it's nice to have somebody that trusts you and wants to have you on and offers you gigs. And I really value that. I
Yeah.
value that you did that because you made a real difference.
Oh, thank you, man. I know you've already said thanks for a card that you gave me.
Yeah, do you know, I think it's important that people know that
Right.
because sometimes nobody tells you
Aye,
that
aye.
you've done something that's made a difference in their life.
Well, thanks, man.
Because I think for me, just getting back into it again
Aye.
was fantastic. I loved it.
Well, we loved having you, man. And it's another cast full with Alexander McNair, James Grant, Lauren Stephen, gigging with her last night as well. Me, you, Nico again, Tattoo Dave, John Ross, and Yvonne Hughes. And when I'm thinking about that's some fucking lineup. That was a great lineup.
Good, yeah. And it's been nice seeing people doing gigs for the first time or for their very early gigs and then watching them
Yeah,
and
yeah.
seeing them as they progress and they're doing other so they're moving up.
Well, people like Geeta and Kirsty are doing amazing just now.
Yeah.
Lauren's done absolutely fantastic since that. I'm not claiming credit for Lauren's career trajectory, but I'm not claiming credit for that either. Yeah, man, everybody, Tattoo Dave's been doing great as well. John Ross was at one of the Lincolns for the comedy festival as well. And
Right.
Alec McNair was there on the
I've
last
known
night.
John. I knew John from
Oh,
when
I've
I
got so
did
much time
comedy
for Johnny. He's
before,
great, man.
whereas lots of the other people I've just got to know in the last year.
Yeah, yeah. And there's still the Lincoln, I think. I'm not sure if that's the same night.
Was that with our? Oh, we've got an audience, so a number of people there.
Yeah, at least 7 people there. So yeah, we're doing well. I actually think that was like I don't know how many was there.
That was a good night.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that couple that they came back with their daughter the following month actually. But I can't remember their names, so maybe I shouldn't have mentioned them. Get terrible with people's names, even though it's like there's not that many people at my gigs. It's like maximum of 50 or something like that, and I still can't remember all the killers' names. How does Kevin Bridges remember the 20,000 people? Like,
well, I'm the other way around. I don't recognise people. I've got a bizarre thing called prosopagnosia, where I don't physically recognise people. So that means that even people I've performed with, I'll look at the pictures that you're showing me, I won't recognise any of them. So it's just as well you tell me who they are.
And yet another one from the Lincoln there, man. It's I meant to put a few in, but I think I've maybe overstacked the slideshow with Lincoln ones.
Lots of the Lincoln.
Yeah, but that was a summer one. I think that was in June. I think there's maybe one more, but it's not of you. But I do like Lincoln. It's been actually coming up for 2 years since I've had a gig there, and it's been nice. And we've tried so many different things, and not all of them have worked. But in the grand scheme of things, everything's been worthwhile.
Right.
You know?
I love it again. That's something we've talked before about some of the smaller gigs, and there may only be a handful of people,
Yeah.
but they've loved being there. They've really enjoyed. And sometimes the atmosphere is great with
Yeah.
just a few people.
Yeah.
That all you need is for people to join in and to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, well, I mean, there's. I think my favourite night was October when we moved to Sundays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that probably a good move to do that.
And yeah, and it's. But I think this one's June. So that was one of my favourite nights I've had you on. Because I was like a decent audience. Most of them were there. In fact, they were all there to see comedy.
Which is great because then people are being part of the night. They're part of what's going on. Because when people randomly think they can
don't
shout
know what's going to
out,
happen.
it's funny.
Yeah.
Because I was doing Panopticon last week, and the site was going really, really well. But my very, very last punchline, somebody shouted something out, like just as it was coming, and it was lost. I was like, that was the last one. Somebody spoiled it completely.
I was my no drama bit. When I say people, the only people that say they don't do drama, somebody said, are people that do drama, and I said, well, aye, but you're gonna step in my punchline. And that's where we are just now, Kingsway Community Connections, the wee Christmas afternoon gig.
Oh, that was lovely. One of the things that was interesting for me, and aside from comedy, was I was involved for a significant period of time supporting people that were looking for asylum, and Kingsway Court was a huge support for people there. And so I've spent a lot of time here with different people, and so that way it was a really sort of nostalgic thing for me, because I hadn't been there for a while. And it was just really nice to be back. And I almost remember a part of my journey and a part of my story, because that was a time probably, if you'd asked me, I would have said, I wish I hadn't had to live through it, because there was so much heartache.
Yeah.
But actually, it's changed who I am.
Yeah.
It made such a difference to my life, to my story.
Yeah.
So that's a comedy aside thing, and doing that was really nice.
And there you are performing yourself there. Bethany in the background, I think. Yeah, it's Bethany.
And meeting people that were there, that were involved in stuff at the time.
And finally, we've got Jesus.
Oh, that's right. Yes, my Jesus action figure. That's one of the best things I've ever bought.
Yeah, it's a great one.
I don't do very much religious stuff. When I first started doing comedy, I didn't want people to know what I did, because I didn't want to be a novelty act. I didn't want people to think,
the minister that does comedy,
that guy's minister, and that would be the overriding thing. I really wanted it to be, do comedy in my own right, and people to laugh at it because they found it funny, not because they found it strange that I was doing it. Yeah. But I do have a few religious bits, and the Jesus action figures one.
To me, it's like a background detail to you. It's not your USP.
Yeah.
And here we are at Alexander McNeil's gig, the Wine Library.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Falkirk. Yeah.
Somebody really enjoying one of your jokes there.
Oh, that's it. It's good when you catch a photo of somebody that's really enjoying it.
Yeah. It constantly reminds me what I'm doing it for, man. I do think I probably take too many photographs, man, but when I get one like that, I'm like, no, man, I'm not taking enough.
I think some of those, when you just capture a moment, what a gift to be able to do that. I'm not a photography person, but when you see something like that and it's just captured a moment, it's just, you can't put that into words.
But I like that. That was a really fun night.
It was a really good night.
There was a lot. There's actually Sean Howard was on. Called Sean Howard. And I've always wanted to see her again, but I've never seen her gigging again. And I've asked her to do a gig a couple of times, and she's always.
I did another show with her for Alec, actually.
Right.
In the Orchard Bar.
Right. Oh, when was that recently?
Just a couple of months ago.
I need to reach out to her again, see if she's up for doing any gigs, man. Because I enjoyed her set. She's great. Yeah. And there we are again. I think similar picture. I don't know. I kind of make these in the morning. Before I come,
right?
And I don't know, maybe I should spend more time on the slideshows, but I also want it to be as kind of frenetic and spontaneous as the things it's capturing.
That's always good. And I hadn't even noticed the glitter ball. Performing under a glitter ball.
It's a shame I don't have any at your Orchard, because if you look up in the Orchard, there's a fucking shark from Jaws.
Oh, really? I didn't know. I am so unobservant. I can do things, and I just don't see anything.
You must be very unobservant, because it's practically life size.
I honestly never noticed it.
It's a Jaws. It's genuinely a Jaws shark. And here we are at Glasgow International Comedy Festival, McCool's 2023.
Great. I always seem to have my hand out. I was like, I'm looking for.
Well, we're actually talking about how you're always smiling, but I'm noticing there that your lips are pursed for some reason.
Yeah, I must have been talking about.
I must have caught you in that rare millisecond when you're not smiling. That was 2023. The shows were a lot of fun this year, but they weren't as busy in McCool's
Right.
as they have been the past couple of years. But we still had some good
I
nights.
do think a lot of when you're doing comedy is showing your audience that you're enjoying it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think they need to know that you know, for you, it's still vibrant and it's exciting,
Yeah.
and that you're enjoying what you do. Because if you're not, then you
They
can't
won't.
expect anybody
Yeah,
else to.
yeah. So that's something I'll definitely need to learn then, because sometimes I come off like I fucking hate it.
Oh no.
And here we are in Lincoln again. But you were there that night, weren't you, with a song Mandika?
No,
Sinead O'Connor.
no, I wasn't.
Shit. Then
I
this
don't.
is
At
out of
least I
place.
don't think so. What?
I
Oh,
was
I was there once when you were talking about Sinead O'Connor.
yeah
Was that it? Was
yeah,
that?
but I tried to get the crowd to sing her Mandinka,
I didn't
and
notice
nobody
that.
knew the song.
I was there.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was
I
there.
thought you were. I was
That's
like,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is actually.
I didn't
It was
know
a
the
weird.
song. I
It was
didn't
a.
know the song.
Nobody
Sorry.
knew the song. Nobody knew the song. But this is genuinely one of my favourite photographs that I've had.
It's just a good duet
Yeah,
photograph.
yeah, yeah. It's just like trying to get the audience to sing Mandinka, because she just died that day, and I don't know, something about Sinead O'Connor. I've always been fascinated with Sinead O'Connor, her
Yeah,
story and her heart and her spirit.
she is a really interesting guy, and
Yeah,
just her whole story,
yeah,
her life journey.
yeah, yeah, and it's a shame that it ended that day. No, and I was trying to pay tribute to her at a comedy show, and it
Yeah,
didn't
because
work.
lots of religious elements in that
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Of you know how things happen to her, and
yeah,
yeah, it's just tough.
yeah. But and we've moved on to the Fringe now. That was the day with Graham Mackey and the Italian Stallion,
Right?
wasn't it?
Yes, yes, that's right.
The one guy that bought a ticket even though he had the show before us.
That's right.
So
Oh, that was a good night as
that was
well.
a great gig.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but we
The
literally
fringe.
had no audience apart from the partners. Fortunately, there was like 4 partners there, so and there was a couple of acts that didn't end up going on. So technically, there was 4 audience, but that was a hell of a show. I really
The fringe is always random because you have no idea who you're going to get,
yeah,
where they're going to be from, even whether they speak English.
yeah, yeah. And back at the Lincoln for October, that's the one I was talking about. My favourite night, the 25. Aye, it was good, man. That was a lot of fun. That was the first one in the Sundays. And remember the thing with Alexander and the glass?
Yes, yes, the glass just broke itself.
Yeah.
That was a bit spooky.
It was a bit spooky, but I think we should be looking at your Jesus action figure. Like,
Yeah, it could have been that.
I think you had them that night,
Oh,
actually.
no, it wasn't there. Otherwise, there would have been nothing spiritual happening. Obviously,
Yeah.
I think these things are. I'm fascinated by supernatural and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I mean, just to explain that Alexander McNair was on the same night and the glass just randomly jumped off the table.
Yeah, yeah. I once did a ghost hunt thing.
Right?
I didn't tell them that I was a minister because I thought if they knew I was a minister, they'd say that's why there are no ghosts here.
And the same night again, we're performing there.
But nothing happened when I was on.
Yeah, but I think Trick or Treat, I think that was a dare to the supernatural. And we got a glass jumping off the table. Yeah. And that was a really, really fun night. I remember thinking it was a great call moving to the Sundays
It
that
was,
night.
yeah,
And the atmosphere
yeah,
was fantastic. Everybody was just up for it. I think with the Lincoln, that's the price I pay for trying to make it a specific comedy club with tickets.
yeah.
And sometimes people aren't going to want those tickets.
I think it's interesting because for me, that it ought to work doing stuff further out.
Yeah.
So people that live Knightswood, Drumchapel, they don't need to get a bus into town or a train into town. They don't need to drive. They don't need to park somewhere. I would have thought that would be a good thing, but actually, people still seem to want to
To
go
go
into
into
town
town,
for
yeah.
something. And
But
I'm not sure
I
why.
think it's the fact that they get to go to the town, And there's a cast photo from that night as well. Andrew Durnan, Robin Zatina, Tia Sorjonen, Neil Weeper, Carol Miller, Ray Coley, yourself, and Alec McNair again. It's always fun looking at these photographs actually, because you just remember how
Great.
much how much fun you had on the night, you know.
It is, and it's nice when you see everybody. Because sometimes with comedy, you see people really often. You'll maybe do the same shows as certain people time after time, and then suddenly you don't see them for a year. It's a very strange setup.
Well, I think it's how
that can happen.
it's how transient our careers are, you know, and the different places it takes us, you know.
Yeah,
Also, as well, I mean, a lot of us sometimes just like a wee break.
that's right.
That I actually think breaks are healthy.
Yeah, for me it was 9 years.
That's not that healthy. I told you I'd overstack Lincoln.
Yeah, you've got loads of Lincoln there. I found coming back was really interesting because, in a sense, for me, it was quite a different dynamic coming back, because I did a course in the summer, a place called Skiros, and I did a comedy course with Logan Murray in the summer while I was away. It was part of the setup there with Skiros. And that was what sort of inspired me to do it again. But it was nice coming back because it's quite different. Whereas the first time I'd been doing it, there were things that you were doing, whereas now probably more aware of the scene and how it works. And therefore it was doing it again and just meeting new people, but also perhaps not the same pressure of feeling that you have to do certain things. That for me, I just do it because I enjoy doing it.
I've not. That's the first night of trigger warnings again.
Right, that's about 100 of us packed into a tiny room.
I actually think I've used that already with Lizzie Lenko, and she pointed out that she's not in it.
That's about how many of us in that tiny room.
There was like 14 and everybody was doing 10s.
Everybody was doing it went on forever.
So I had to recalibrate. A couple of less acts the following week, and a couple were only doing 5s and 7s. I
think the audience relayed that night too, though, didn't they? Because some of them were in for a while, and they went out, and other people came in.
Replaced them, And there was just too many people in the lineup that night, or too many people doing 10 minutes. I'd been much better doing 5s, 7s, and 10s. And a wee bit longer for people that closed.
That probably makes sense.
But I mean, it was the first night of the festival, and I did want to get as many people on as
possible.
Although
it didn't feel ridiculously long. Because sometimes if there's a lot of acts, it feels very long. That one actually didn't.
And there we are at Backbone, ending up in the Griffin.
The
following night, that was the next night. That was a fun gig. That was really fun.
That really was, because it looked like there was going to be nobody there, and then suddenly loads of people
just started coming,
and people that I knew were there. So.
And there was that table as well at the very front who seemed like they were going to be a pain in the arse. Turned out to be kind of delightful. Started to be a pain in the arse again, and then were delightful during nobody's set.
Yeah, they were fine. You just never know with people that sometimes people threaten to be sort of disruptive, but actually are okay because they engage. Whereas other times there are people that.
Well, I think that table specifically are a lesson in playing to how they actually are in the moment and your perceptions of them. You know, if you just go with whatever people are doing, it'll usually work out fine.
I had one gig that I was doing. It was out in Bala, and there was this woman right through my whole set, just shouted all the time. And I thought she hated me. And at the interval, I thought I need to speak to this woman because she's just shouting the whole of my set. And I said, did you really hate that? And she said, no, I loved it. I just like shouting at people.
And here we are, the Edinburgh City Football Club.
Oh, that was a really good night.
That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that, man. The lineup that night was great and all, man. That was like the first Saturday of the Glasgow International Comedy Festival, which we decided to have in Edinburgh.
Yeah, always a good option.
Well, actually, some of my best Fringe gigs of the week have been in Glasgow when the Fringe is on. I think.
Yeah, because all the comedians are in Edinburgh during the Fringe, so doing something in Glasgow, suddenly you've got a clear path.
But I think it was good that night because we took a taste of what was happening in Glasgow to Edinburgh.
Yeah,
there was a really nice atmosphere, man. And there's my lovely partner Lorraine and Alec McNair, Stevie Wicks, Haroon Michaud, and Stephanie Brown. All acts, and actually Lorraine almost done a set in the car on the way home. She had us all roaring laughing in the car.
Has she done any comedy?
No, she'll never do it.
Right.
She's seen too much behind the curtain.
That's fair.
But it was actually her birthday that day. We sung,
That's right, so it was.
I sung Happy
Yeah.
Birthday. And I really enjoyed my hosting that night. I really get into it.
The audience there really did connect, which
Yeah.
was lovely.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. And Stevie seems to think he didn't do that well, but he only didn't do that well when he felt and said that I'm not doing that well. Like
Right.
I think he done he done great. You know what I mean? And
I think sometimes you've got to not get too enclosed and
and
stuff because it's so easy to just be harsh on yourself.
absolutely, man.
And I think the whole comedy thing it can be a vehicle to beat yourself up
Yeah.
rather than recognizing what it really is.
Yeah,
I think one of the best bits of advice I was given really early on was 24 hours and then you let it go.
Yeah.
So if it has been a disaster, if it has been a wonderful gig, whatever it has been, don't think about it more than 24 hours, move on.
Yeah.
And I've always found that really helpful because sometimes you can just go into yourself and be absolutely sucked into that world.
And then go on Facebook and declare that you're quitting comedy.
Yeah, and again,
and it's like it's you need to know where the importance of it begins and ends.
Yes, yeah. I think one of the things I've been fortunate about is I've always had stuff outside of comedy, and therefore it's meant it's not been everything. Because I do think it must be hard. I don't envy people that are doing it all the time because I think it must be really hard when that's just microscoped almost.
Yeah, totally, man.
And I think you would need to find a really sort of robust mindset to be able to deal with it. I've probably always been afraid I didn't have that.
No, not at all. I know exactly where you're coming from. And it's I think for me with the comedy, it's good that I put on nights. It's good that I'm so invested in the Glasgow International Comedy Festival and the Fringe and the photographs as well. Because the photographs are a lot to do with comedy, but also only probably about 40% of my photography.
Right.
You know, so I do a lot of it points towards comedy, but also other things as well.
Because life is about storytelling.
Yeah.
And you find your journey in those stories, and sometimes just looking back and capturing moments, you recognise how they fit together for your story.
Yeah. Aye. And that's I hope you've enjoyed your story this afternoon.
Jimmy, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed being here. All right, and thank you to you all for listening.
Well, I'm not quite finished yet. I'm going to have another wee chat, but that's the end of the slideshow for now. So see you in a second.
Right.
So we've looked at the past. What about the future? What does it hold for you? What does it hold for me? Que sera, sera? What happens in the future, John?
Interesting. On comedy, I'm just enjoying the journey. And so for me, I don't have any sort of things I particularly need to do, want to do. I'm just enjoying doing it. So it's just fun. I don't have any sort of big dreams or anything like that. I've never wanted to do it full time, and I've never wanted to be on TV or stuff like that. That I just enjoy doing it. So for me, probably more of the same in terms of comedy. If somebody I like asks me to do something, I'll do it for them.
Yeah, well, what else have you got? What's for the, because you're quite busy over Easter with the church stuff.
Yes, yeah. I'm the strategic development officer with Glasgow Cathedral.
Right.
So that's interesting. I've been there a year now. This is just the end of my first year. So it's looking at all the stuff that the cathedral does and looking at how we integrate it and how we make things work on it. Right. So that's exciting. It's quite different from what I've done in the past. It fits into my skill set, but it's quite different from what I've done in the past. So it's interesting to do just like a different road and do things in a different way.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like you're retired from ministering in pretty much the same way as Graham Mackey's retired from teaching.
Yeah, that would be pretty much it. Yeah, I think I've been really lucky that when I stopped, I'm still fit, I'm still healthy, and I'm still enthusiastic. I think a lot of people, when they get to that stage, they just want to do nothing, and fair dues. That's okay. But for me, I was never in that place. But I've been in that place where I say, I still feel that I want to do things. I still think I can make a difference in the world.
Yeah, well, you can.
And so I still want to do it.
You definitely make a difference all the time. You make a difference in comedy rooms from what I see.
Thank you.
Actually, I've talked about the future, but we've talked about something. You touched on something during the slideshow, and we talked about it a bit in the break about your involvement with the Glasgow girls.
That's right. Yeah.
It's the Kingsway Community Connections are kind of celebrating our history just now, and I'd like to hear a wee bit about the Glasgow girls, your involvement with them.
Yeah, it came about by being at Drumchapel High. One of the schools that I did was Drumchapel High School, and at the time when there were a lot of people coming looking for asylum, that a lot of them stayed here at Kingsway in the Lincoln flat, but were brought to school at Drumchapel High because there was space at Drumchapel High. And I guess for me, it was a whole new experience of just meeting people from every country in the world. And one of the first things that I learned was that often people talk about asylum seekers, but it was realizing that asylum seekers were as different from each other as they were from people that lived in Drumchapel and in Scotland. And I guess sometimes you need to have ways of defining what group that you're talking about. But the problem with that is it doesn't give any sort of indication whatsoever of how wide or how diverse that group of people is. So it was literally people from all over the world, people coming whose stories were just absolutely heartbreaking. I think for me, if I was to go back, in many ways, I wish I hadn't had to live that. Because I heard stories that I just, I couldn't have imagined the lives that people had, the journeys that people had to escape from absolutely impossible conditions. One of the things that I often say to people, if I'm talking about because people often say, oh, people are coming across for because benefits, they'll get more money or benefits or economic migrants and things like that.
I remember, I was saying in the break as well, I used to live here and I remember that kind of attitude as well. And also, we were talking there, I was thinking about that just saying asylum seekers without recognising the diverse range of people in there it makes it so much easier to dehumanise.
Absolutely.
And one of the things, see them as like a scourge that are all one part of the same wave, then obviously it's going to be harder to connect. But you were obviously in a position where you got to know them individually.
Yeah, it's real people. And one of the things that I always ask people, whenever anybody says something like that to me about why people come, the first thing I say to them is, what would make you give up everything in your life and travel to a country that you'd never visited before, you didn't know the language, and you knew nobody there? What would make? And for me, there would be almost nothing. I almost cannot imagine a scenario that would make me do that. And that is the story of most of the people that we're talking about. And I think trying to get that through to people that these are real people with real story. And when you listen to people's stories, like we were saying before, that it is that storytelling thing. When you listen to people's stories, when you share their lives, that's when you suddenly recognize that this is where people are at. And it was, for me, it was heartbreaking. I can't tell you the number of times that I have just sat in my house and cried because of a story I'd heard, because of somebody I'd met, because of something that had happened, because of the way people were treated. It was life defining for me. So in some ways, I wish I hadn't had to live it, because it was so challenging in every way. but it has changed who I am. That as a person, I know so much more, not just about people, about the world, but also about myself from doing that journey with people.
Yeah, that's yeah, man. I feel almost ashamed that I lived here and I wasn't so aware of what was actually going on.
I think lots of people weren't.
Yeah.
And I think one of the hard things, again, for people that were looking for asylum was lots of them were scared.
Yeah.
They'd been scared from where they'd come from. They'd had a terrifying journey to get here. They were scared that they might not be allowed to stay or they would be deported. And that was a constant fear for people.
Yeah.
And therefore, a lot of people, I think, kept themselves to themselves because they were scared of whether they would be accepted, whether they would be welcomed. And part of that was because of the journey they'd already made. And another part was just that overriding fear of, what if people don't accept us? What if people, hate us for it? And so,
and that go back to the actual subject of the podcast. That's a thing that most comedians should be able to easily identify.
Yeah,
you put yourself in front of an audience. What if they hate us? What if they lynch us?
there is. I think we all have like a deep fear, and that's that people won't accept you.
Yeah.
Will they accept you for who you are? And whether that's in comedy, whether it's about your race, your gender, your sexuality, everything that makes you brings with it a fear that maybe people will not accept you for who you are. And I think that's one of the things through life that I've always tried to fight for, is to enable people to be accepted for who they are, and to be affirmed and to be helped to be the best you can be in who you are, rather than feeling that you've got to adapt to somebody else or that you've got to change because somebody else wants you to be different.
Yeah. But that's you're just going back to the thing that you're not being a minister and a comedian is not a gimmick. It's who you are.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the magic of both of those things is what we're all in it for. For connecting people, for finding that idea.
It's being authentic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think in life, if you are authentic, people will relate to you
Yeah,
because you're being authentic. And I think one of the things that has been really significant for me through my life journey is to recognize that you can change the world.
Yeah.
That I think for a long time, I thought that you could create structures or systems or programs that would change the world. And I realized that it's people that change the world. That it really does. It comes down to individuals and people. And so traveling with people that were coming to a different country who had lived horrendous experience that I to this moment, I still cannot even imagine. I've heard what people have said and I can try and imagine, but I cannot get to understanding what that must have been like. But it's knowing that somewhere, if you can travel that journey with somebody, you will make a difference in their life.
Yeah. And that's exactly the same for on stage as well.
Yep. Yes, it is. And sometimes just in little ways you can do it. Sometimes there are big ways you can do it, and sometimes there are just little ways in helping somebody to know that you're there.
I do feel that with comedy as well. I think the biggest mix of demographics is really what matters. It's finding, because there's so much people complain about woke or complain about the old ways, like the the Northern Club working men's comedians joking about mother-in-laws or whatever. And it's, to me, comedy by this point, by 2024, should be beyond all of that.
Yeah. I find sometimes I find myself uncomfortable with things that people say, because I think we've got to be inclusive, and I think humor can give a sort of an overview thing that allows people to be diverse and can laugh at things, but without necessarily taking away from somebody's humanity.
Yeah, and or bringing politics into it, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're there with ideas that unite, and we're seeking to make people laugh. And the only way we can make everybody in a room of all demographics laugh is if we find a central idea that unites us and makes us smile.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's seeing that bigger thing.
Yeah.
You know, somehow we're in something together. You're not just in your own little box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much a good place to end.
It's been good.
And we're talking about what song you would like for the slideshow, and it was
Smile by the Supernaturals, which I absolutely love, because it's got that almost sort of cynical view of the world alongside Smile. I love it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on, John.
Thank you, Joey.
Get you on in a while and talk about how things have progressed after 2024.
Thank you so much, and thank you for listening.
Mana do 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 do. Mana do 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 do. Mana do 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 do.